Apple has released the new 2020 update to the MacBook Pro 13-inch, and there are two different models to choose from. If you're in the market for one of these notebooks, which model should you buy? In a previous video, we had a look at the specifications for these notebooks and considered the pricing information. But at that time, we didn't have any benchmarks and we didn't know what was inside these notebooks. Well, now, of course, the 2020 MacBook Pro 13-inch is out in the wild. People are posting their benchmark results up to Geekbench, and these laptops have been featured in a couple of teardowns, so we can get an idea of what's actually inside the laptop. So there are basically two models to choose from. One of them has two Thunderbolt 3 ports, and the other one has four Thunderbolt 3 ports. So to keep things simple, I'm going to refer to these two editions as the 2-port and the 4-port. Now, what you need to know from the outset is the 4-port version has the 10th generation Intel processors in. So that means much faster graphics performance. The 2-port model still has the 8th generation Intel processors. Now, nothing wrong with the 8th generation processors. But let's have a look at the different specifications on the Apple website. Last time we looked at prices in pounds, so this time we'll have a look in dollars for our US watchers. When you look at the specifications on the Apple website and the information about the product, the only difference it would seem is that the 4-port model has those extra two Thunderbolt 3 ports, and it has the 10th generation processors, which does mean faster RAM. But Apple doesn't make any other information available about the differences between these two systems. Externally, the laptops appear identical, apart from one has two additional Thunderbolt 3 ports. They have the same display, it's the same chassis, the same touch bar, and they both have the new Magic Keyboard, like the one that's on the 16-inch MacBook Pro. But when you open up the laptop, inside they are different. And internally, it's the same as last year's notebooks. The 2-port model has a single cooling fan, whereas the 4-port model has two cooling fans. So arguably, the thermal performance in the 4-port version is better. There is another slight difference that you'll see as well, and that is that the batteries are slightly different in the models. And the reason for that is because in the 4-port model, it makes room for some larger speakers. The audio performance on the 4-port model is better than the 2-port model. Of course, the main difference internally is the 4-port model has the 10th generation Intel CPUs. And this means the updated Iris Pro graphics, which will give you significantly better graphics performance, particularly when you consider that the 2-port version has the Iris Plus 645 graphics. So there's quite a decent jump in performance with the new 10th generation Intel CPUs. And the other thing that changes, of course, with those new generation of CPUs is that the RAM is faster. So those are the differences. That's what you need to know. The question is, which one do you buy? If we have a look here on the Apple website, we can see that the entry-level price is $1,299. I'm not going to bother with any of this $99 business. We'll just call it $1,300 because that's what it is. So $1,300, and for an additional $100, you can double the RAM. So I would say that's a decent laptop for $1,400 to have that 1.4 gigahertz quad-core i5 and 16 gigs of RAM, 256 gig SSD. Yeah, decent value. A decent laptop at that money. Now, what is the CPU? Well, it's the i5 8257U. And you see, we just opened up Geekbench 5 here, and you see there are almost 10,000 results here. And for a single core performance and multi-core performance, you'll see there's a fairly wide variation in the posted results here. You can see these are all the mid-2019 MacBook Pro 13-inch. So it's the same CPU as the previous generation. Here we can see the MacBook Pro 16,3, so that's the new 2020 model. And that wide variety of results is because not everybody knows how to run a benchmark. You don't want to have other things running on the computer. It wants to be plugged into an external power source. The temperature of the room that you're in is going to make a difference to the performance. If you're in a really hot climate, the laptop is not going to perform as well because it will heat up faster. So simple thermodynamics, really. So what we have to do is just take what we think is a reasonable score from here. So I'm going to call it and say that this CPU scores 940-ish on single core and about 4,000 on multi-core. There's enough 4,000 plus scores there to make me fairly confident in that performance. So how does that then compare to the next CPU up? So if you have a look, if we go and just select this particular 13-inch MacBook Pro, we'll see that there is an upgrade option on the CPU. and we can boost it up to a 1.7 gigahertz quad core. This particular CPU model is the i7-8557U. And again, let's jump into Geekbench and just have a look at the benchmarks. Only 402 results found, which gives you an idea of the number of these that get sold compared to the i5 versions. Again, many of these are mid-2019 notebooks, but you will find some 6,3s in there, which is the 2020 edition. Again, massive variety in the scores, so I'm going to call it, I've had a good look through lots of different pages. I think you're probably going to be looking at about 1100 on single core and about 4100 on multi-core. What that tells you is that this i7 processor only gives you slightly more performance on multi-threaded tasks. It is quite a bit quicker at single-threaded. Now, is that worth $300? I don't think it is. So if we spec up a notebook, I've put the CPU upgrade on with the extra $300. I've added the 16 gigs of RAM because, of course, why wouldn't you? Let's leave it at 256 gig of storage, and we're up to $1,700. Now let's just go back to the main page again and have a look at the difference between the machines. We can get into the 4-port model for just $100 more. And for that extra $100, we're getting the 10th generation i5, 16 gigs of RAM, that's faster RAM, and we're getting 512 gigabytes of storage. Now you could be thinking an i5 is not going to be as good as an i7, but that's actually not the case. Intel's naming conventions are really quite misleading. And in this case, the i5 processor, the 10th generation, is the 1038NG7. Let's jump into Geekbench. We've got loads of these that have just been uploaded. The MacBook Pro 16,2, that's the 4-port model. 16,3 is the 2-port model. Have a look at the results that we're seeing here. Again, a huge variety, but I'm going to call it and say that it's about 1,240 on single core and 4,440 on multi-core. Now that means the performance is actually better in this 10th generation i5 than it is in the 8th generation i7 that you can spec on the 2-port model. It's actually quite a bit better. And particularly when you consider the upgrade to the graphics performance, I see absolutely no reason at all to spec up the 2-port model with the i7. And that's really the simplicity of the buying advice here. I think if you want an entry-level MacBook Pro, the £1,300 model is a really good computer for that price. Add an extra $100, get yourself up to 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's a great machine for that price. But as soon as you start speccing up anything else, if you spec up the CPU or you spec up the storage, you get so close to the price of the 4-port model that it doesn't make sense to upgrade the 2-port model. Why wouldn't you just pay the extra, get those 2 additional Thunderbolt 3 ports, get the better thermal performance, get the better graphics performance and the 10th generation CPUs, get that faster RAM, you'll get more storage. I think the storage is actually faster as well in the 4-port model. And not forgetting that it sounds better as well. You've got better speakers. Now, obviously, $1,800 as an entry point to the 4-port model is more expensive than $1,300. But you are getting so much more for your money. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying don't buy the 2-port model. I think that's a perfectly good machine for many use cases. What I'm saying is it just doesn't make sense to upgrade it. Sure, stick the extra 8 gig of RAM in for $100, but that's really as far as you should take it. If you feel that you need more performance than that, then you should be looking at the 4-port model. And that's it for this video. I hope you found that useful if you're looking at buying one of these machines. If so, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, you know what to do. I'll see you next time for some more geekery.